Okay, let's break this case down. Joining me are two special guests. First up, criminal defense attorney Gabriela Teresa Gonzalez is back with us, and joining us now is professor of psychology from Stetson University, Dr. Chris Ferguson. Great to have you both here. Doctor, I'd like to start with you about this case. If Mr. Gargiulo is found guilty and it is determined that he did commit these crimes, who does this? What kind of person does this?
Yeah, I mean, so with an individual that you see committing a string of highly violent acts like this, you usually find that they have a history of a condition like antisocial personality disorder. So antisocial personality disorder, which oftentimes people simply call, psychopathy or sociopathy, is basically a condition that's marked by a callous disregard for the well-being of others. These individuals typically lack the ability to feel guilt. They lack a conscience. They take advantage of others at the very extremes. They may engage in violent behaviors towards others and typically feel no remorse for their activities. They're typically aware of what they're doing. They're aware of the illegality of what they're doing, but they're pleasure-seeking individuals and really don't care about the consequences, particularly for other individuals.
Yeah, I'm no professor, I'm no psychologist, but I can see a lot of defendants who probably fit that mold. Gabriela, let's move on to the idea of the case here presented by the state. In your opinion, have they presented a strong case that Michael Gargiulo murdered two women and attempted to murder a third, or is there a situation here where maybe the jury, they didn't present a strong enough case for one of the victims, but maybe a stronger case for the others, and the jury now has to sort through that evidence?
So the state's definitely got the defendant cold on Miss Murphy. They found his DNA at the scene of the crime. She testified that she identified the defendant as the person who committed this crime against her. So that evidence in that case is very strong. The evidence in the other cases, however, are not strong at all. In fact, there's absolutely no DNA evidence, no other evidence that ties the defendant to those other killings. So it's purely circumstantial, circumstantial evidence that the state is providing in hopes of convicting the defendant on the other three murders.
This is an interesting case. What can we think about the defendant here? Did he have a false perception? Again, if he did this, did he have a false perception that his neighbor, Mr. Tudor, was bullying him, and it created a justification in his mind? What did you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it seems to be a lot of what's being discussed is the argument that Mr. Key believed that his neighbor was creating a lot of disturbances, a lot of noise, perhaps bullying him in certain ways. And we see this with a lot of individuals who commit homicides. In fact, we had a lot of discussion of mass homicides in the press over the last week. There is this concept called an injustice collector that we talk about in criminal history. So it's the idea that certain individuals tend to blame others very readily for problems that happen in their lives. And for some of these individuals, that does, at least in their mind, give them a potential justification for engaging in a violent criminal act. So basically, the other person has made their lives miserable in one way or another, and eventually that level of provocation for them gets intolerable, and then they decide that they've been pushed to a point of acting violently. So oftentimes they'll put the blame on the victims of their violence.
Which is what we see here. Joe, when he had an interview with media, he thought that Mr. Tudor was evil. Now, Gabriela, as we move on to this case, prosecution still putting on their witnesses. Do you expect the defense to call anyone?
Most likely not, unless there are any witnesses that could attest to the fact that the victim in this case, Mr. Tudor, was in fact antagonizing the defendant. Was he actually doing the things that the defendant claims that Mr. Tudor was doing, such as mimicking noises and movements of the defendant in such a way that provoked him to act? If there is a witness available that will state that, then the defense will most likely bring them forward.
But that's not a defense, though.
It would be a defense in that he snapped. This was someone that was provoked by the victim's actions day in and day out for years. And one day he just finally had it and had to get rid of the victim, which would go to Dr. Ferguson's analysis that this was someone that just could not take it anymore.
Interesting. All right, well, that might be the way that they're going. They've cross-examined a few witnesses, but very short, very one quick questions. We'll see which way they go. In the meantime, let's take a break. When we come back, more to cover in this trial.